I love it.
All right, cool. So welcome back to another episode of Entirely NBA, hosted by Entirely Media. I'm your host, Darion Robinson.
Yes, sir. My name is Kyle Murph.
And today we have a special guest with us, Chris Luchey. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes,
Love your show, and I'm honored to be here.
We've been talking over the last almost a month now, 3 weeks, almost a month now. And just podcast aside, I know we had a conversation last week that I really enjoyed. So I'm really liking you as a person. And that was the big thing I told you. Like, even if we didn't do the pod, man, it was nice to have a connection like this with you. So I appreciate it. I want to give some background information on ABCD because, even the younger generation, that's before their time. They're hearing and like, we don't know what the hell that is, right? Yeah. So I want them to understand how reputable this program that you were part of really was. So when we just look at just the beginning of that. So the way I see it is initially it was sponsored by Nike, right? Then Converse took it, then Adidas, and then ended up being with Reebok. So right there, four of the largest brands touched this program, correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. Now, when you talk about just players that came through this program, I made a little list, right, that I need to get out there just so people understand the players that came. And I'm sorry if I'm leaving some people off. Trust me. But when we talk about this, we're talking about Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, Jermaine O'Neal, Tracy McGrady, Kwame Brown, Eddie Curry, Sebastian Telfair, Gerard Green. Then we talk about Marbury, Rashad Lewis, Mo Williams, LeBron, obviously, Sean Livingston, Josh Smith, Brandon Rush, Danny Green, Greg Oden, Kevin Love, O.J. Mayo, Drew Gooden, DeAndre Jordan, Monte Ellis, Charlie Villanueva, Lenny Cooke. Like, come on. That's talent at its highest form of it. And it went through the program that you're involved in. How did you even get involved in that?
Academic Betterment Career Development, ABCD. So this is Sonny's baby, right? This is all Sonny, right? He's the genius. Sonny came up with the ideal of having a camp. Let's get the top 100 or so players, and let's give them life skills. Now, everybody has adapted to this, but it was Sonny's creation. It was his baby. He's the one who created this. Started in Princeton. And so I got involved because I had a player that didn't make Sonny's round ball classic, okay? And I called Sonny as a 23-year-old kid complaining, fighting for my kid that didn't make the game. And so he started.
Wait a minute. I'm going to stop you there.
Yep.
You said you were 23 at that time?
I was 23, just finished up at Michigan State. And I was coaching high school, Southfield Lathrop High School. We ended up finishing 15th in the country, had a really good year. Although we lost the state championship to Saginaw High School. Shout out Saginaw High School. Marsha Thomas kicked our butt in the championship. But, I'm going to keep it real. Ain't nobody going to have no takes coming back. Hey, man, you left out this. Yeah. I'm going to go and shout people out. You feel me?
I know, right?
Yeah, so I had a player, Mike Chappelle, who was a parade All-American and All-American everything, but he didn't make the round ball game. And at that time, it was called the Magic Round Ball Classic, and it was in Michigan. We're in Michigan. And so he explained to me that Michael didn't come to ABCD. He chose to go to Nike. And we needed to alleviate that issue moving forward. And so from there, I started being a part of ABCD. And when I started, it was just coaching. I was just a coach. And then quickly, shout out Gary Charles out of New York. Shout out Gary DeSeizure, also out of New York. These guys were the directors at the time. I wasn't a director initially. I eventually became a director, but at that time, the first year or two, I wasn't a director. I was just a coach. And it was that. That's how I started. That's how I met Sonny. That's how we built a relationship. He started sponsoring my high school team, Southfield Lathrop. And that's when that relationship grew on the grassroots side as well. So the ABCD and grassroots and high school was all simultaneous, right? I'm coaching high school, Southfield Lathrop. I'm coaching AAU, Michigan Mustangs, Michigan Hurricanes, and I'm working, with the ABCD camp, and then eventually the Round Ball Classic as well. What made it really, really good? This is the thing. This was the difference. So players that were, no disrespect to shoes and all that, because it's just sponsorship, right? Sponsorship can change, right? So you had Nike. Really, it was just Nike and Adidas at that time. And then you may have guys that were non-affiliate. players would be on the other circuit, but still come to ABCD camp because at ABCD camp, we lined them up, right? So Lenny Cooke and LeBron, that face off, we line them up. Lenny Cooke and Carmelo and LeBron, line them up. That was the thing at ABCD, we always made sure the top guys matched up because Sonny would say to him, listen, you want to crack at LeBron? You want a shot at Sebastian Telfair? You want a shot at Kobe Bryant? Come to camp. We'll make sure that happens.
Yeah.
It just was different, and so a lot of other camps, if you will, they wanted to protect the integrity of guys' rankings. So often they wouldn't line them up so that, hey, you be the judge of character. What do you think? You think he's better or he's better? But they're not playing against each other. At ABCD, we look, man, you got to put up or shut up. And so it was different. And then it being in New Jersey, you got the crossover from New York. I mean, the flavor, it had flavor. It was different. Yeah. It was different.
Did you ever was there ever a situation, because like you seen Lenny Cooke, he talked about, he's better than Bron, or like like how he felt that he was. Like, was there ever a moment where they did clash? Not clash in a bad way, but where they went against each other and it was real, just like it was real gritty when they went against each other? Or
Lenny actually had a good camp at ABCD. The problem is when he matched up with LeBron didn't have the stronger team. Lenny Cooke had Paul Davis on that team. He had some others. LeBron had, and then Lenny was a grade above him as well, and like 2 years older than him, 2 or 3 years older than him from an age standpoint. But when they matched up, Lenny had a better team. He had a subpar game. It was solid. It wasn't like he was very bad. But LeBron played very well. And when everything was on the line, right? They're down, 2 points. Everything's on the line. LeBron could easily go to the basket and score, try to maybe take it into our sudden death overtime, and you will. LeBron stops, pulls up a three, all the pressure. The entire camp now has surrounded it, right? So all of the players, you got people in the stands, but the players in the camp, they have surrounded the entire court. So everybody's there, right? And LeBron is a rising junior, right? So he's not even going into his last year of AAU. His last year of AAU, he didn't even play. He broke his wrist. But with everyone there, and back then, all the scouts, so you got all the NBA guys, all the NBA scouts. We were the first to have NBA executives coach the players. So now you're being coached by NBA executives as well, right? He got an opportunity. Hey, LeBron, go create, go make something happen, get to the lane, get fouled. Nope. What does he do? Stops, rain, pulls a three. Yep, this is my court, my house, my game, everything. And then, guys just go crazy. So it was, yes, he outplayed them, but it was also the atmosphere with it that was like, hey, man, this is a big dog shot right here. This is a big dog right here. So in that, it just kind of hovered over Lenny. Right, that right there just kind of hovered over him the rest of the camp because it was brewing. I mean, he had maybe a better game against Carmelo when they matched up, and obviously Melo continued to do great things. But it almost like it's like it took the soul of Lenny Cooke, if you will, after that experience. No disrespect, because Lenny was a good player.
Right. Yeah. No, that's an excellent way to put it, because we know as hoopers, when someone gets the best of you, especially in an environment at that high level, man, that sits with you for a long time. If you never get your get back, that sits with you for a long time.
No question. Absolutely.
Who's the one player that you can think of that surprised you the most from coming through the ABCD camp, looking back now?
All right. So I'm going to talk about 2 guys, right? The first one is Tracy McGrady. People don't understand, T-Mac essentially was not originally invited to the camp, okay? T-Mac went to Mount Zion. Elvis and those guys kind of pushed Sonny. And it's always like this, right? We always had 50 guys. Oh, man, he should be in the camp. He's best. He deserves it. And maybe Sonny, with his big heart, 10 of those guys will get in, right? Mm-hmm. So Tracy McGrady gets in the camp. He's unranked. Like, we don't even know who this guy is, okay? Now the players got their jersey numbers, like it goes up to like 218, right? So he's like 218 or whatever his jersey number is, right? So, so you're like flipping through the books. Who's this guy? Who's 218 or whatever his jersey number is? Who is this guy? Oh, never heard of this guy. So first of all, he has a fantastic camp. His explosiveness, his aggressiveness, he's attacking the rim, so on and so forth. The player in that class was Lamar Odom. Lamar Odom was the guy, right? 6'10", handled the ball, got it on the string, out of New York, doing everything. Here's this kid coming from Florida, right? Not a whole lot of exposure. The All-Star game, there is the dunk. Tracy McGrady comes through. First of all, to make the All-Star game is incredible, right? 20 guys. He comes through with the most explosive dunk, comes down the lane. There's Lamar Odom. There's all these athletic, Zendon Hamilton. There's all these bigs, all these athletic guys. Tracy comes through with a windmill dunk. Boom! And it just like sets the – see, that's the thing. It was the atmosphere at ABCD. The whole arena just erupts, right? It just erupts. And so seeing a guy coming from that far, unranked, to being – some had him either 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, essentially number one player in the class, that's never been done. So that would be the first one. That was like the most exceptional, right? T-Mac. The second, Sean Livingston.
Oh, yeah. People talk about him a lot. Yeah.
Listen, Sean Livingston, you had Sebastian Telfair. I mean, you had the guards in that class. You had 5 exceptional point guards. And here's the thing now, it's New Jersey, so it's East Coast, so it's East Coast flavor. Yeah. Everybody has their crew there, their AU coach, right? I'm there with my guys. So when my guys come, I'm there. I might have 5 guys in camp. Sean Livingston is the only player from his team in camp. He's the only one rated and ranked, right? So Futsui, I think was the name of their AU program. So coming out of Peoria, right? He's not a Chicago kid. He's Peoria. So he doesn't have friends. He doesn't have anyone like, moving around with him. So me as the director, I ended up being the guy that kind of mentored him, if you will, for that week, right? I spent a lot of time with him because he didn't have anybody to lean on. So I noticed that he was by himself. And do you know how crazy it was around Sebastian Telfair? Like, can you guys understand the fanfare around Sebastian Telfair at that time? I mean, it was second only.
And in Jersey, too. Like
everywhere. I mean, Sebastian's notoriety was second only to LeBron, who was a year above him, right? So LeBron is now gone. Now we're talking about Sebastian. We're talking about that age group. Livingston left the camp, the number one point guard in the class, with all of the hype on Sebastian and others, which was exceptional. I mean, like for him to come in and then not have a cheering section. Like he didn't have a cheering section, to go with him during that week. And yet he dominated and he left the guy. And so, obviously his career stamped his performance. But, Livingston, that one was kind of special because I think all the odds were against him. And he just bust right through it.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people even know about his story, too. Like he's a big, like when people say like what if they never got injured, like he's one of those people that are kind of like a slept on what if he never got that gruesome injury that he had. I mean, he still had a great career, but people sleep on him. They need to do their research for him.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Sean Livingston, obviously it worked out. When he found the Warriors, it was a fantastic fit. But prior to that, his career hadn't reached the level of what the expectations were, when he was coming out of high school.
You currently hold one of the longest streaks for like a successful AAU running program. Like, talk about us how you started that journey.
So I was a coach of the Michigan Mustangs and the founder of the Michigan Hurricanes. And so if you go back some years now, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but from 96 to 2005, we had a tremendous streak, of All-Americans. And in that streak of 10 years, we had 17 All-Americans. Now, there's multiple All-Americans, right? We like to look at, obviously, because I was a part of the Round Ball Classic. So there's the Round Ball Classic All-American, right? There's a lot of people know about the McDonald's All-American, right? There's the Parade All-American. There is now ESPN All-American. And in the past, there was the Rivals All-American. So I could name 17 guys that were that. I mean, and so that success trait, being rated, back in the 90s, they started rating AAU programs. So during that time, we was always 1, 2, typically 3. Occasionally we might have been 5 or something like that. That was uncharacteristic, but we were always essentially in that top 5. And not to bore you, but if I would name those guys, think about this, right? So we started with Mike Chappelle, All-American, went to Duke, Greg Graves, Charlie Bell, Antonio Gates, football player. People don't know that Antonio, shout out Antonio, he was an All-American in basketball. He played in the round ball. Brent Darby, who passed, rest in peace. Jason Richardson, a lot of obviously you guys know Jason Richardson. Desmond Farmer went to USC. Then I had a unique year. I had Robert Whaley and Kelvin Torbert, who were number 1 and 5 in the class. So Robert Whaley and Kelvin Torbert. From there, I went Anthony Roberson, Matt Trannon, Maurice Ager. All 3 of those guys were in the same class. All 3 of those guys were top 25, as well as Paul Davis, who was top 5. Then, next year we went Olufamotimi, Deion Harris. From there, Alex Legion, and I want to mention one kid that's going to be a point to this, Dar Tucker, and then Anthony Crater. Now, Anthony Crater was the number 2 rated point guard behind Brandon Jennings prior to John Wall going on that tear. Which is I know there's been a lot of discussion about John Wall and Brandon Jennings, but at that time, Anthony Crater was the number 2. So during that time, we had 17 guys, that were All-Americans. So it was a great streak. It was a great time, and a really good accomplishment. I could talk about that for an hour straight. It just depends on how much I want to go into it.
I got all the time in the world. So when we talk about having that many All-American players over that span of time, how do you personally deal with, and we've seen it, obviously we've been a part of it, how do you deal with egos of players like that?
So for me, it was different back then. Okay. All right. So let's dive in that a little bit. Things have changed a lot. These kids, I don't know how successful I could be with running the program right now because things are different, right? They have so much more exposure, so many more things to deal with, to overcome. First of all, social media. We didn't have social media in the 90s and the early 2000s, and it definitely wasn't, at the level it is now. So that's number 1. We had rankings and we had things like that. For me, I strictly was state of Michigan. And, the thing, I always would find a player that had a certain characteristic, right? He was the type of player in today's game, LeBron. He was a guy that people wanted to play with. You know what I mean? There was always somebody like that, Antonio Gates, or I might have had a football player. By the way, I had several football players as a part of my team, which typically brought toughness. But in regards to egos, obviously you got to have them in different positions, right? You don't want to have 2 point guards. It may be a point guard, a wing forward, a 3-4, if you will, and maybe a big. You're selling them on an incredible goal of obviously moving up the rankings collectively. In Michigan, we had unique dynamics because in the state of Michigan, players can't travel like they can everywhere else. Like you guys hear about the tour that LeBron took in high school where they went around and he played in California and he played in all these different events as a high school team. Well, in the state of Michigan, essentially you can only play schools from the neighboring state. And it's about a couple 100-mile rule with that. The other thing is a lack for kids in Michigan was they couldn't play in all-star games. So when guys played in the summer and they'd play in an all-star game, Michigan kids couldn't do that. So for me, selling with the Michigan kids, it was an opportunity for you guys to have the exposure that you miss during the season. So now put egos aside and let's move up the charts together. And it's a day-to-day thing. There's no science to it. I couldn't tell you that there's one thing that I did that worked, but obviously it was about relationship, that family atmosphere, doing some things outside of basketball, right? I'll give you an example. We'd go play in California or we'd go to Orlando or something like that. We would go to Disney. We would do things outside of basketball. A lot of kids or a lot of teams, they grab the players, they plan the tournament, they stick the kids in the hotel room and they say, hey, do what you want to do, right? They just give them freedom. We were planning stuff, right? We would go eat together. We would go formally have dinner together, similar to what it would be like when they got to college. We would do something fun. We'd go-kart racing. We'd go to an arcade back in the day. We'd, maybe go to an amusement park. We'd go to the movies. We'd go to a basketball game if it was in season during the spring when you have, tournaments in April and May, take them to an NBA game as well. So we would do things like that together at the same time of playing in the tournament. So I think we had a little bit different dynamic than most.
So 2 questions with that. So why couldn't kids from Michigan play in All-Star games? Is that just a rule that just randomly popped up, or?
Nah, man, the Michigan High School Association is different. It's been grandfathered in forever. Really old school mindset. And it's just a rule. They just believe in, their thing is, the player that wins a state championship, that guy, they put an emphasis on the state championship, which is the Final Four held at Michigan State University. They believe, they want to keep things, as they say it, pure. And so in their mind, if you, I'm just telling you what, their legislation, but something that should be changed still hasn't been changed. And that had a lot to do with strategy. If we get to talking about strategy, some of the things I did different during AAU outside of the things that I've shared so far.
You think it kind of holds some of the talent back, or you work around as being a coach and having different strategies to give them more exposure?
It hurts them drastically. And so over the years, especially since I have stopped coaching AAU, during my time, I had a solution for it, and I'll share that with you. But now you get a lot of kids that leave. They leave the state, they go to prep schools, they look for different opportunities. So over the last 10 years, the best players in Michigan, most of them have left, so, it's hurt, it's hurt the state, the Michigan, Mr. Basketball is not the same as it used to be. The Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan used to be, that top 10, top 5, top 20 guy, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, and, Jason Richardson, guys like that, Maurice Taylor, Mateen Cleaves, others. But it's different now. The thing that I did that was different is this. And it's probably a good strategy maybe for some of you guys. So I was the first one to really take young guys and play them up. So what do you mean? You got your 17 and under team. You have a 17, your 16, and maybe a 15 if you have an AAU program, right? Typically, you take your best players and you put them in the age bracket that they're in. So me, I looked at it totally different. I said, you know what? 17 is the age group that gets the most exposure. It is the one that the sponsors, shoe companies, and things of that nature, brands really focus on and care about. So I took my best player in the 9th and 10th grade, and I played them up. So that meant I had less spots for your traditional rising seniors, your traditional juniors. And so what that did is that gave those players an opportunity to be on the circuit for 3 years. So that gave them an opportunity to get some national exposure prior to their senior year.
Okay.
So case in point, Mateen Cleaves. Mateen Cleaves, McDonald's All-American. That class had great players. Winford Walton, who just passed, Mike Chappelle, really good class. 3 guys that were really, really good. Those guys had to really perform at ABCD camp or at that time, the Nike camp. And that was essentially what they had to move up the charts, right? So Mateen Cleave, shout out Mateen. He tore into Mike Bibby. Mike Bibby was a player that was heavily rated. At the Nike camp, when they matched up head to head, he tore off into him. Well, Winfred Walden played for a coach that was a legendary coach. I mean, he played for a coach that was legendary. And so played at Detroit Pistons High School. So tons of exposure just for that high school. So my approach, by taking Kelvin Torbert when he was in the 9th grade and Robert Whaley in the 9th grade, allowing them to play with Jason Richardson and Brent Darby and those guys on the 17 under circuit. By the way, champions of the big time, 98. Championship game 3 years in a row of the big time, 96, 97, 98. But just tooting my horn a little bit there. But as we continue, I think that philosophy was what I used. I used that with Anthony Roberson. I used that with Olufemi Matimi and others. And that was how I was able to alleviate that issue with rankings for kids in Michigan.
Okay. Did you get any pushback from bringing kids up?
No, because it was an incredibly unique opportunity for those players. Those guys that played there, what ended up happening is some AAU teams started to kind to entice that, with some of their players and maybe allow them to play up for a tournament, but they were kind of still stuck in their ways, stuck in their style. Now, you're going to play 15 and under, but you're going to play this tournament 17 and under. But for me, it was like Anthony Roberson was, the ball was bigger than him at the time. It was like, he's 13 years old, 5 foot, whatever. Man, come on out here. You starting point guard. Let's go. So I didn't get a lot of pushback. I think it changed, because of the success. I think some people changed, but not a whole lot of pushback because I only did it with the top guys.
You did it with the people that you knew would get some playing time on those tournaments if they went to a higher level.
Yeah, so I made a decision. I said, okay, let's take the number 1 point guard in the junior class. I would say, okay. And then let's say Anthony Roberson was the number 1 point guard as a freshman. How much better is the junior than the freshman? Maybe he's better, but maybe it's this much. Mm-hmm. I can take that player and he be this much better, and then he's gone. Or I can take that freshman, bring him here, and look at the jumps that he's going to make over the next 2 years by allowing him to gain this experience right out the gate.
So what other stories regarding that AAU stretch have you not shared so far?
Well, let's talk about Tone Gates. So Tone Gates, man, was 6'4", very athletic, had that like Draymond Green type mentality, understanding of the game. Made everybody better. We just gave him the ball. We had another player that was really good on the team named DeAndre Hewlett. We had some other guys that were good. But he, being a football player as well, his toughness, his tenacity, his will to win, that by itself was able to take us to a different level. We ended up losing in the championship to DC Assault that year in the big time. Back then, the big time had DC Assault. DC Assault. Back then, the big time had 250 teams participating. So nothing like that exists today. And it was wide open to every shoe. It didn't matter who you were sponsored by. Everybody participated in the big time then. So Tone Gates, as good as he was in football, right? We know him. He's a Hall of Famer, incredible tight end. Antonio was exceptional as a basketball player. It just in that at that time they weren't ready for that type of a player. A player that was undersized, and so he didn't fit the mold as a 6'4" shooting guard, if you will. In today's game, he could play because Draymond Green is, a 4-time world champion. Antonio would be the same. The other thing that I know I've never shared is Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
Matt was on that team with Antonio. And just to give you a characteristic, so Matt and Antonio had a very good relationship, very close at the time. And when we would throw Matt in the game, Antonio and Dante Darling and other those guys, and their game would go to another level. I wouldn't say to protect Matt, but to make sure, hey, we don't want to be blamed for, having a duck off, because Matt's in the game. So they would take their game to another level. By the way, at that time, our coach, of that team, it was a friend of mine who passed a few years ago. His name was Daryl Ellis. So shout out to Coach Ellis and his son Bear. But so that would be one story. Obviously, Matt Ishbia played for us. Man, the battle between two guys on the team at the same time would be Jason Richardson and Kelvin Torbert. Here we got and DeAndre Hewlett. Here's three players that are pogo sticks, right? Both of them jump out the gym. DeAndre Hewlett was 6'7". He ended up being drafted by the Toronto Raptors. Kelvin Torbert was graceful. He was in the air. He had hang time. He's, just hanging a la Jordan, if you will. And Jason Richardson was kind of like Dominique Wilkins, like power, just boom, right? So it's funny because at that time I was with Adidas and I was with Sonny. We'll talk about Sonny, but I wasn't one of the main guys, right? I wasn't, one of the main guys. Our team wasn't one of the main teams, and so back then you would play 3 games the last day. So the championship day was 3 games, and the day before that you played 2. So our last 5 games, we had to go through all of Sonny's darling teams, which was, Long Island Panthers out in New York. Shout out Gary Charles. It was the Atlanta Celtics, based out of Atlanta, Wallace Prather. It was the New Orleans Jazz, who was at that time coached by Thad Fouché. Who else did we end up having to play? DC Assault was our nemesis, but they ended up getting knocked out the game before we would have played them. So we had to go through. We lined them up, and so it was just kind of fun, like just knocking each one of the so-called darling teams out as we went through and through the championship. But we had a lot of fun, man. I mean, we had a lot of fun. I mean, I guess one of the stories, the biggest story, I guess, I would tell. Here's the cake. You know how Kendrick Perkins always talks about, me and LeBron played together. We played AAU together. He brings that up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Always.
Let's talk about that story, right? Because they're not giving the actual story. So Kendrick played on a team in Texas. I don't recall the actual name of his AAU team. So he played with them throughout his career, right? LeBron played for his coach, Drew Joyce. That was his team predominantly, which ended up turning into almost like their high school team, right? And then there was a gentleman by the name of Leon Poe, who was a top 5 player, great athlete, went to Cal, I believe, and he played for the Oakland Soldiers. So LeBron's high school coach had a relationship with the Oakland Soldiers, and so he ended up playing with them every year in the tournament. It was like the Elite 8 in California every year. All right. So this tournament is held in Houston, Texas, which would make sense why Kendrick, would figure some things out. So everybody comes to this tournament. It's the Texas Classic, great tournament. Sebastian Telfair, you had teams from everywhere. New York. It was a heavy, heavy tournament, right? And so we're there, of course. We're there, the Michigan Hurricanes. So they have taken LeBron James and Kendrick Perkins are playing with Leon Poe on the Oakland Soldiers AAU team. So it's like, okay, we know who's going to win this damn thing. They got 3 guys, top 5, top 10, worst case scenario, playing on the same team. All right. So ironically, we would play, let's say, on court A at 9 o'clock. They would play on court A at 10 o'clock. So we kept, we would always play on a court. They would always see the second half of our game. All right. And LeBron, he's an Ohio kid. He knows, we're in Michigan. He knows our guys, has a relationship with some of our guys, so on and so forth. So we go through that tournament, and Aaron Brooks had a great game against LeBron and those guys. Seattle Rotary, shout out to those guys. They end up losing. Now, they lost. They ended up losing. Yeah, they lose, and I believe they lost to the DC Assault team. Okay,
I'm telling you that DC Assault was a powerhouse too during that time.
Listen, Curtis Malone, DC Assault. Listen, that was like my favorite team. Outside of our team, DC Assault has always been my favorite team. We had a great time. Those Illinois Fire, also great relationship with those guys. A lot of really good teams coming up. But DC Assault, good team. So they lose. Lose that tournament. And so, like I told you, typically back then it was tournaments. Now they just kind of just have games. They build it all up for the end. Back then, every weekend was an actual tournament. So the final 8 teams are the next day. So we come in the next day. LeBron and them are, they're done. The team is lost. But LeBron is in the stands at our games. So the Elite Eight game, we win. The Final Four game, we win. The championship game we're about to play, LeBron is there. And, in a joking way, he's like, yo, coach, let me get one of them jerseys. Ain't y'all coming to Cleveland in 2 weeks? We're like, yeah, we coming to Cleveland. Let me get one of them jerseys. I'm like, boy, you about to mess my head up. I'm trying to coach a team. You over here talking to my players. Like, what? Wait, what?
Right.
So, Hurricanes win this tournament. So, tell Kendrick Perkins, if you're going to keep talking about me and LeBron played together, that's when they played together. The Texas Classic. They didn't win. The Michigan Hurricanes win that tournament. Now, we're going to the airport, and we end up winning. We're running through the airport. Who do we see in the airport? LeBron. So all the kids run up to LeBron. We won, man. We won, so on and so forth. And not to spoil it, make a long story short, that was the first time I had a conversation with LeBron about potentially playing with the Michigan Hurricanes. That would be the unique story with that from the standpoint of Kendrick Perkins always talking about, me and LeBron go way back. But tell the whole story. Y'all didn't win that tournament. Now, if you're going to shout out the Hurricanes. Now.
What is one characteristic or trait that's important for a coach to have in order to be successful, specifically in the AAU space?
I think one of the biggest traits is motivation. You got to be able to motivate the kids because it's not your traditional setting, right? You are playing possibly in a different city, in a different state. You may be playing on a court that doesn't have the fans circling the court. You might have multiple games. So I think motivation is one of the biggest things because, as an AAU grassroots coach, you might play multiple games in that day. So you got to be able to get guys fired up. You might have an 8 o'clock a.m. game, a 9 a.m. game at these tournaments where traditionally you playing at home 7:30 p.m. on varsity. So that to me is kind of the biggest trait. And then outside of that, I think you kind of got to be a parent, because you're taking someone else's child on the road, traveling with them. They're leaving them in your care.
Like you said, there is some criticism when it comes from that when people are playing AAU. So what do you think are major advantages for them playing AAU?
Overall, I think it's toughness. AAU is going to put you in an environment that is unusual, right? Some things you have to do on the fly, style of play, location, the dynamics surrounding the tournament or the event that you're playing in. So I think one of the greatest advantages of kids that play AAU, they're really tough. They're strong. They go through some adversity. Typically, you don't have that. Even with the European, style of basketball from the standpoint of practicing, which I think is great. I think you should practice. But AAU allows you to, challenge that top guy, right? Today's game, you got the rankings. You got, rankings change every other week, every month, every quarter. ESPN, Rivals, whatever it may be. And, and now you have an opportunity to go after that guy that's rated above you. How often would you get that, in a just playing games once a week or practicing several times a week? Yes, you're getting better with your team. Yes, your skill level is increasing. But being able to get that toughness, that dog, as we like to call it, I think a lot of that is established with AAU basketball.
I agree with you 100% on that because Kyle and I both played AAU as well. But I want to talk about one advantage that I think, at least I thought that people would feel would be the exposure aspect of it. So toughness is an inner characteristic. I get that, but I think the exposure itself just goes unnoticed in most cases. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, you have those rankings. Typically, the guy that's rated top, number 1, top 5, top 10, you got a bullseye on your chest. So you want to maintain that. So it's harder to maintain it than it is to kind of climb and chase you down, right? Now you got these predators coming after you, and now you're trying to hold on to it. So it serves its purpose on both sides. Those that are trying to climb the ranks that think, man, I'm better than this guy. What? They got this guy top. I'm better than him. Okay, go prove it. You can prove it on the circuit. You have an opportunity to prove it on the circuit. The other thing is, you top 5, you might think you need to be number 1 and you want to sustain that. Well, guess what? You got to prove it every time you play it, right? Because every time somebody's on the floor, you have to maintain and have that separation that I'm here and you're here. And so, yeah, from an exposure standpoint, you get that. Obviously, the coaches, they like to travel and go to these AAU tournaments that are typically in nice, warm weather, great cities. They do a little bit of work. They may do a little bit of play, if you will. So from an exposure standpoint, you get a collection of all of these great players in one facility. How often can you get that?
Hey, what's up, guys? Hopefully you're enjoying this video so far. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and comment below with some of your favorite parts so far. Chris has been an amazing guest, the perfect guest, I must say, but not everything in life is perfect. Unfortunately, we did lose some of the footage from this, just video. We still have the audio, so you're gonna see for the next second part of this where he kind of cuts out, but we did our best to still make it work. Still an excellent interview, and I thank you guys for tuning in. Let's continue on to the next part. What actually happened with John Wall and Brandon Jennings that day?
You know what? I'm gonna be short and sweet, guys, on this. So at that time, I wasn't the director. I had moved on. So I'm gonna save that one for Gary Charles. Hopefully you guys end up getting him on. I'm going to leave that one for Gary. Let Gary comment on that. But like I said, at that time, Anthony Crater was number 2. Brandon Jennings was definitely number 1. And we didn't really know John Wall. And so John Wall obviously made that leap. But what I can say this, right? I can say this. You only played 2 quarters. And the most amount of points ever scored in an ABCD game was by Kobe Bryant, which was 40. And that was tied by Olu-Famotimi, which was also 40. So you got to understand that them guys had to really, really be putting it in. So you're only playing 2 quarters. So really, really destroying someone, hard to do that. But because even in the LeBron matchup, like it wasn't like LeBron scored, 40 points. So I'll leave it at that. But John Wall established himself. But I wasn't the director, so I don't want to comment as the director because at that time I wasn't.
I get it. And I love the answer. I'll take it.
Okay.
So transitioning, when you talk about moving into something that's not only good for you, but good for, I guess, your resume and career going forward, how the heck did you become an NBA scout?
Wow. Shout out Mark Warkentien, Cray Warkentien, and Mo Warkentien. So Mark Warkentien, who recently passed, was the general manager of the Portland Trail Blazers at the time. His daughter, Cray, works for the Minnesota Timberwolves now, and Mo is his wife. Great people, so I wanted to shout them out because Mark was my man and a great human being and just a brilliant mind. So Mark was different. And so I met Mark, and when he hired me, just quick story, it was very simple. We were in California, right? We're at the Marriott Hotel. And I bump into him, and I'm like, hey, Mark Warkentien, how you doing? He's like, Chris Luchey. He's like, I got your resume upstairs. He's like, I want to talk to you. You got time? Yeah. We sit down and talk, and he tells me essentially like, look, scouts are different. They move around a lot. And I think you're unique, and I think you're intelligent, and I think you're, brilliant in some ways, young, aggressive, and can do some things. And I'm going to give you your first, which ended up being my only, your first job in the NBA. And he said, you ain't going to get rich off of it. Let me tell you right now, you ain't going to get rich. But you're going to always look back and say, Mark Warkentien gave me my first opportunity. And so he hired me literally on the spot in the lobby of the Marriott Hotel, the LAX Airport Marriott Hotel. And I'm so grateful for that.
So where did you get your resume from, or is that
so
just from following you?
Yeah, so I guess I sent it to him. I didn't even realize that I sent it to him, but I guess I actually sent it to him because in my discussions with my mentor, Sonny Vaccaro, about, things moving forward and what you're going to do next, because I was a manager at Ford Motor Company. So I went to school for engineering and materials management. So I was working at Ford and then coaching. But basketball was taking over my life. Sonny Vaccaro wanted me to be everywhere and do so many different things. So, so we talked about maybe, working in the NBA, and which was a little bit untraditional for a grassroots guy, to work with an NBA team. But I think he was the first one that encouraged me to kind of reach out. And so, so Mark hired me. And now, listen, if we get to talking about that role, it was a very, very small role. And I can explain that role. We can dive into that at any point, but it was a very small role. It was a unique opportunity. And it was him just thinking outside of the box, saying, this guy got an eye for some things. He's a good judge of talent and potentially maybe of character. I'm going to give him a chance. He can help me. Obviously, it was to help him. He wasn't just doing it as a favor. You can help me in the unique strategic things on how I think as a general manager. And so, so he hired me.
So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as an NBA scout?
I'm going to talk about the challenges and the role. So the role, again, we didn't have we didn't have social media, and you didn't have as many tools as you have now. Look what I did. Mark said, I want you to go see live every big time small college player in the entire Midwest. Go to NAIA games, go to Division II games, go to small college games, go everywhere. So I was essentially, I'm going to see all these kids that never think that they have a chance in the NBA. All of these kids that are playing at small schools that are dominating. And essentially it would be, Chris, go watch the player and determine if the Portland Trailblazers need to spend more time and money evaluating this player. So that was the role. I mean, Mark was always thinking different. He taught me as a manager. You guys look at the draft, and he always talked about this. Get the assets. I mean, what do you mean? At one time, Portland Trailblazers had Jermaine O'Neal, Zach Randolph, and Rasheed Wallace. They all played power forward.
I think that was Zach Randolph's, rookie year or beginning of his career?
Beginning of his career, yeah, first couple of years. So it was always like, man, Portland needs a shooting guard. They need a small forward. They need a whatever. His thing was, I got all the assets. So now prior to the trade deadline, every team that wants to make a move in the playoffs, they're all calling me because I have the assets that they need to get to another level. So now I turn that into multiple draft picks. I can turn that into the point guard I need, et cetera, et cetera. So in the draft, his thing was get the best asset. Don't draft a player that, we need a shooting guard today. Things change. Get the best asset. But going back to your question, challenges. I mean, the biggest challenge I would say with scouting is, people probably don't know this, scouts don't typically have long-term contracts. So scouts move around. They're always potentially, typically it's a 1 or a 2 year deal. So you could be with this team for 2 years, let's say, and then you could be out of the business completely, or you're with another team. So the greatest challenge, I think, is, do you have somewhere to go next? And for me, after Mark, I didn't move to another team. So that would be the greatest challenge.
I certainly understand that. That uncertainty is very weary on anybody. Yeah. So I get it, man. Now, one of the greatest things that you've ever done, accomplished, or started, CGL Sports and Consulting. What was the mission and vision behind that?
Wow. So, I started off prior to CGL with SFX Sports. So in order to mention CGL, I got to, of course, mention SFX. So SFX Sports is the largest sports firm that's ever existed, right? So all of the majors, CAA, United Artists, WME, Wasserman, it would be maybe 2 of those put together, right? To give you an example, we represented 25% of the NBA just in one firm, and there was 10 agents there. And I worked with, I think, the greatest 2 basketball agents that's ever existed, which is David Falk. People would recognize him as Michael Jordan's agent, and Arn Tellem, who, had everybody, T-Mac, Jermaine O'Neal, so on and so, Joe Johnson, et cetera. Also with that group now, you have Bob Myers, everybody knows from the Warriors.
Yep.
You had Rob Pelinka, who obviously everybody identifies with as Kobe's agent, and obviously with the Lakers. So huge firm. But my experience there, what kind of created CGL? In the large firms, what you end up having is multiple agents often competing. They're working together, right? They're one family, one group, but often they may be competing with one another for the same players. So you're your own identity within that firm. And so somebody has to always be the tiebreaker. And that can be tough. Now, at SFX, it was the toughest. We had 10 basketball agents, along with football, baseball, soccer, golf, tennis, etc. But just speaking to one sport. And that wasn't, there's you have to be built for that, meaning you have to enjoy that. You have to want to be in that space. And for me, I was always big on, you remember now, I'm a grassroots guy. I want to use the platform to help the little guy, right? I want to overcome some things. I want to use this grandiose, huge platform to do some, uncustomary things. And so eventually I left and started CGL Sports, wanted to be boutique. I guess the purpose of CGL is literally just maximizing our clients' potential, right? Specific to their goals. What happens when you're with a large firm, no disrespect, because it's, it fits wherever you want, whatever's your desire. But for me, it was about maximizing an individual's goal and being specific to them, because you run into cookie cutter situations often with a big firm. And so I wanted to go different, and I wanted to be quite honest, which I wanted to get back to Michigan. I wanted to get back to helping kids that I knew their families coming up. I knew them when they played, grassroots. I knew them in middle school. So I wanted to be able to help kids initially from Michigan, and then it evolved a little bit into kind of the Midwest.
How do you approach the recruitment and management of the clients for CGL Sports?
Yeah, good question. So now, different organization, right? Different company, different goals, right? Most people want to get in it to get as many clients as possible, to make as much money as possible, so on and so forth. I'm a grassroots dude, right? So I'm community, so a little bit different. So for me, criteria is always character. It's going to start with character. And I know that's, kind of maybe cliche and easy to go to, but when you're boutique, every move affects your overall business. Because you're boutique, you only have so many guys. So you want guys that you can manage their career. You want guys that have a sense of loyalty, guys or girls, he or she. You want athletes that just live by a certain type of code. So for me, it starts with the character, because I don't really recruit. Like most people really, really are active recruiting. Over the years, most of the clients that I've been involved with have come from like a relationship. I know their coach. I know a family member. One of my players know the player specifically, and they like what they were doing. So for me, it goes back to that, that character. That's kind of the biggest thing for me.
When you just talk about comparing how you do business versus how big businesses do business or corporations do businesses, that aspect right there is enough to draw in the players, the ones that want something like that, to you, which means it's going to be an excellent relationship going forward, kind of like you've established with Wilson Chandler. What's been, simply put, what's been the greatest highlight that you've had in your time with him?
You know me, man. You ask these questions and I can never give you a direct one single answer, right? So forgive me.
That's okay.
So I've known Wilson since grassroots. He came out of my AU program. And so Wilson has seen me at my all-time low and as well as some highs. But I'm going to give you 4 things that were really, really unique. Number 1, Wilson was with me when my fiance was murdered, something I don't talk about often, but I had a fiance, I was engaged, that kind of ended the AAU run. He was with me when we lost her, and we lost her doing the Speech tournament. It was in May. It was a big tournament that we played in Indiana. And I got news while coaching those guys in the tournament, on a Saturday, and with that tournament ending on Sunday, still have all these kids, that I'm responsible for at this tournament. So that's one. So he was with me at a very low point. High point, I got Wilson Chandler drafted 23. Mm-hmm. He came out without my advice. I advised him to go back to school, to be quite honest, after his sophomore year, after going to the NIT at DePaul, after having a solid year, 14 points, maybe 6 rebounds a game. But he didn't make all anything. He wasn't All-American, all this, all league, all Big East, none of that. But he was a solid player, and he had potential. And he just was ready to get out, man. Let's just say that. So I'm telling him, are you ready to go overseas? That's where you're going. Because if you coming out, you're on no boards. Nobody had him on a draft board. Yeah. You're going overseas. And so, long story short, my trainer at the time, a guy by the name of Rodney Hurd, he called me and he's like, man, you got to look at this thing different, man. This kid is a little bit better than you think. And I'm like, I've known him since he's 14. What do you mean? And he pointed out a thing. He said, the kid makes shots tired. And that's a gift. That's a skill. And he pointed that out to me, and I didn't recognize that. He saw that in the workouts and the training in the early going on. So Wilson Chandler goes 23. Shout out Isaiah Thomas, Hall of Fame Isaiah, Detroit Pistons Isaiah, who was the president of the New York Knicks at the time, who flew into Atlanta and had a conversation with me. We agreed that he would take Wilson 23. He only had a first-round pick at the time. And I sold him on some of the traits. The only player that I told him that Wilson wasn't better than in that position was Uncle Jeff. We call him Uncle Jeff. Everybody calls him Uncle Jeff. Jeff Green.
Jeff Green. Yeah.
Jeff Green. I was like, that one might be a problem, but I'm saying all these other wings, Corey Brewer and all these other guys, I'm like, Wilson, he'll dominate those guys. He's just more physical. He plays both sides. He has a skill set. He rebounds. Isaiah obviously did his own work. Obviously, the kid played at DePaul. Isaiah's from Chicago, so he did his own work there. And, Wilson went 23, which was, that was an incredible jump, guys, right? Undrafted to 23 first round and to a major market. And then outside of that, obviously, we went to China, and we could talk about that. We got back from China. He signed an extension, and that extension was $40 million. In today's game, that extension would be about $150 million based on the collective bargaining agreement at this point. And lastly, he did 14 years, and he was able to leave the game on his own terms. The game didn't retire him. When he left, he just was like, I'm done. I don't want to be injured anymore. I want to spend time with my kids.
So speaking of China, you played a major role in the China CBA option deals in 2011. How did you actually manage to do that?
Great question. Not to bore you. Essentially what happened is it was the NBA lockout. Guys were, they were scrambling. Everybody's trying to scramble. Where am I playing? And so Europe took advantage, right? That was the destination for most guys. Europe took advantage. They were going for the high-level guys. It was reported Darion Williams went to Turkey for like $2 million.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys were being, they were offered $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month, which they weren't used to. But guys needed jobs. They didn't know how this thing was going to go, so they needed money. And so I had, young in the game, young guys. So I had all these young guys. They were like, yo, what options are available for me? And I'm like, there's not a lot of options because they could take veterans, before you guys. So I had Epe Udo, Allen Anderson, Anthony Roberson, Wilson Chandler, a few other guys that wanted to play. I was able to get Epe Udo in Israel. There was this quote that Kobe Bryant, that China was offering Kobe Bryant several $1 million to come, but there was a hitch. You would have to stay the entire season. And so, of course, Kobe's entertaining it. Now, had Kobe gone, it would have changed the landscape of anything. It might have crushed that NBA season, right? But obviously he didn't. And but he was, considering it, at least in the paper. Well, long story short, I'm sitting here and Wilson Chandler's like, bro, I want to play. I'm young. I'm trying to, I'm on my rookie deal. I want to play somewhere. So I had two options for him. I had an option for him to go to Italy up until Christmas. It would be, you got to stay to Christmas no matter what happens in the NBA. And then there was the opportunity to consider China. We get together. We're like, man, let's spend the weekend and let's talk through it. So we talked through it. And what I did, nobody had really paid attention to the Chinese market. I'm looking at the Chinese market. The regular season ends around February 15th, which is typically the same time as NBA All-Star Weekend.
All-Star break, yeah.
Right? So I'm saying, okay, hold on. Now, obviously, if you win the championship, you're going to go a little bit farther. So I say to Wilson, listen, bro, the absolute worst-case scenario, you're stuck in China to February, close to March. But you're going to play in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter, like, if we sign today and then tomorrow the lockout ends, now you're going to be struggling getting on that plane going to China, right? Yeah. So I ended up taking Allen Anderson, Anthony Roberson, and Wilson Chandler there, right? And I told Wilson, listen, we're going to do it this way. Nobody wants to be the first one. but it's best for you to be the first one because you have all the options. You can choose all the teams. You have all the resources. You can figure out what's the best fit for you. Then it's going to kind of flow, and guys are just going to be taking deals, but not knowing what they're getting themselves into. So we researched all the options that he had. We ended up going to Guangxi, a team in Hangzhou, China. It was a beautiful city, big lake, a bullet train ride from Shanghai, which is one of the best cities.
Yeah.
There was an American coach who was the assistant for Phil over the years. And so he won championships, American coach, and great city. Now, after that, the floodgates open. Here come J.R. Smith, here come Kenyon Martin, here come Aaron Brooks, and 5 other NBA guys. The only difference is those guys didn't know what they were getting themselves into, when they were choosing to go to China. They had no idea what the cities were like and so on and so forth.
And so I still see some of your posts. How heavily invested or active are you still in that Chinese market?
So obviously I got 3 guys going over there and they're all in their 20s, right? And they're my organization, right? They're my business. So I flew to China with the intentions to stay 2 weeks. I said, guys, I'm coming with you. Let's go. I'm going to China, right? So we take a picture and go, we out. Let's go. We in China. I got 2 weeks worth of clothes packed. Let's do it. I'm really locked in. I got over there and I saw how difficult the preseason was, right? Now, just overseas, period. Them guys practice twice a day. NBA guys ain't ready for that. They ain't ready for that. Wait, twice a day? Oh, okay. We're doing that for the first week, right? Training camp. Got you.
Right.
The first month, maybe even further. So I see the guys and they're all like, they're going through these tour days and they're like, yo, man, this like slavery, man. This is crazy, man. They're like freaking out. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to stay a little bit longer. Guys, I end up staying in China 6.5 months.
Oh, my goodness. Why?
I did the whole bag, right? Because I felt like in the early going, when I go home, there's an airplane right behind me. They're coming home.
Yeah.
And it's too much at stake, right? You have to stay here for the season or you won't get what they call a letter of clearance. So FIBA governs all of basketball, NBA included. So in order to leave, go from league to league, you have to always get a letter of clearance. So I'm like, if I leave and one of them just can't hack it and come home, if Wilson decides, man, I'm right behind you, then now it is going to be negative. Now it is going to be, a bad look. And we took our time before we went. One of the things that we did, I guess that I didn't mention, say, okay, we're going to China. All right, let's control the media. What do you mean? We're going to contact them. We're going to give them all of our reasons. We went with Adande, J.A. Adande, who was with ESPN at the time. He did the stories on all of his platforms. So, there was going to be criticism, but we were able to lay out, this is why we're going. This is what we're doing. We're excited about it. So we were able to get our message out so that we wouldn't get destroyed from a media standpoint with that decision because everybody was against, oh, you're crazy. You go to China, you're going to miss the NBA. No. So I'm like, but if I go home and these guys come home beforehand and don't get that letter of clearance, that would be a negative story. That's why I stayed.
That's the story that we wanted right there when we looked at this as an overview was, one of many stories, but that one in particular because it shows the devotion that you have towards your players. And you don't see that, at least on the forefront, with a lot of agents. It's I might go over there, I might not. Or if I do go over there, I'll stay for a couple of days and I'm going back just to get you a little acclimated. And you were heavily invested. You, again, 6 months.
Only packed 2 weeks worth of clothes.
right. It was washing the hell out of them clothes.
I can say it's easy to get clothes in China. I'm sure you can imagine that. But they were my guys. And so, I want them to be successful. I don't want them to, because I'm a mentor at first. Before I'm an agent, I'm a mentor first, right? So I don't want you to screw up your life. I don't want you to screw up your financial stability. So, let me go over here with you. I'm going to learn some things and you are as well. So since that, obviously since I was over there, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So I met with every brand. So every shoe brand in China, Showdown, which is Chinese Jordan, Peak, Anta, Rigoror didn't exist at the time, but Li Ning, who D Wade is with, I met with all these brands. And when I say I met with them, I physically flew to their factories. I went to their headquarters. I met with them. So I spent time with them. I got to know them. I built relationships with them. And so since then, there's been a few opportunities here and there where they may call me or ask some opinion on some guys, or there may be a player that may reach out to me and say, I have interest in, an Asian shoe. If they know, most people don't know, right? Because I don't broadcast it. So if they know, they'll reach out, and then I may make the connection and connect the dots between those brands and those athletes that might be a good fit from a marketing standpoint. And then obviously I've continued to have guys to go over there to participate and play in the CBA, Chinese CBA, mentor different agents on that process, help maybe connect some of the dots, and then take some players over there for exposure or marketing opportunities, things of that nature. So it's mostly just connecting the dots to resources that I was able to establish, during 2010, 2011 that I've maintained.
And I'm glad you brought up especially when you talk about shoe brands, because I thoroughly just enjoy and love what Anta is especially doing with Kyrie right now. They have a strong shoe, a strong campaign. It's working, and I love to see that.
I agree. Yep.
All right, so we're moving into one of our last sections. But before we do that, when we talk about your company, your roles, is there anything left on that particular list that you want to touch on?
Yeah, so I like, one of the things I've been doing, just started most recently, is working with young agents, right? Young agents that are just starting. I have a gentleman by the name of Juan Aregbe, a young lady named Janine, we call her Chica, a young lady named Shira. She was actually the youngest agent to ever be certified in basketball. Kudos to her. And I'm having some discussions with some other young agents, because here's the thing. There's 800 agents certified in basketball in the NBA. There's 450 NBA basketball players, right?
Right.
So the odds are against most agents with, attaining a client, recruiting a client, being able to service a client. And so what I've done is offered myself to a lot of young agents with helping them in that process. Hey, you're not able to work at, I'm not going to name all the agencies, right? Large agency, right? They haven't offered you, they haven't come after you, or you don't desire that, right? And so, hey, come over here to CGL. Let me mentor you, assist you, help you grow. And then, look, I'm not looking to build this huge agency and hold on to you, send you on your way, right? So I've been mentoring some agents now and really trying to help them navigate the space so that they're not just out here with all these sharks, if you will, by themselves. Right, yeah. So I would say that's kind of something I'm working on. And I'm enjoying. I'm really enjoying that right now. If
you were to have people reach out to you, especially young and up-and-coming agents, is that something that you'd be willing to take more on?
Yes, absolutely. Because, it's crazy. I had a couple of agents where I have obviously several friends that came up with me. We were all scouts or whatever it is at the same time. Give you a case in point. Messiah Usury. He was, when I was doing grassroots, he was a volunteer scout for the Orlando Magic. Maybe that's not even on his resume, right? But he was a volunteer scout at that time, right? I was what you would call a part-time scout at the time. I told you the scouting thing is different. So a lot of these guys over the years reach out. My boy Frank Ross, with the Wizards. And they may have just, come into contact with individuals, young guys. And so they forwarded individuals to me, and I may mentor them or give them advice. And sometimes I don't even remember. It might be a conversation. It might be a couple of conversations. It might be a text. And then I might have one or two agents come up to me in Vegas and be like, yo, Chris, what's up? And I'm like, hey, how you doing? Oh, you don't remember, do you? Like, nah.
You don't remember.
My boy Frank put us on the phone. My boy John put us on the phone. I'm like, wait, you're the guy? Yeah, man, I had a top 10 pick this year. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So it's just been something that I've always done. Like, I answer all emails, if you can believe that. It doesn't matter who it is. The kid that's Division II NAIA that wants to go pro, I answer the email because I give him the information. Hey, listen, do you want to play overseas? Okay, do you understand what level you will start, et cetera, et cetera? So I always answer all emails and all calls and try to do my best with mentoring and giving back.
I like that. So speaking to our audience, if you're a young agent, even a player, and you have aspirations of working in this industry or being in this industry, this is your guy to speak to. I'll have, I promise. Hey, listen, don't flood it, but we'll make sure that the email address that's associated with him, one that, you guys just can't go crazy with, will be down in the description below. But seriously, after everything you've heard today, why wouldn't you give him a chance, right? So I like that.
No doubt.
Now, basketball. Let's specifically talk basketball.
All right, just straight hoops, right? Just straight hoops.
Straight hoops. Kind of like rapid fire, a little rapid fire. But we like to ask everybody, this varies so much, but like, who are your top 5 NBA players of all time?
All right, so I'm a Michigan State guy, so Magic Johnson,
Okay.
right? Start with MJ.
Okay.
Meaning Magic. We go with the other MJ, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron, right? Right.
Yes.
So these are probably most people's top 4, right? And then it gets tricky, I guess, at least for me, because if you go in top 5, are we going, the best players, the best talent, the best whatever? But I lean towards Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think he gets, for lack of a better term, crapped on all the time. And
he does.
In my era, like, he was the guy. Right, so Kareem was the guy. People forget about what he done as Lou Alcindor prior to Kareem.
Right,
he was heavily rated and ranked as a high schooler. He was what we saw with LeBron. Take away the magazines and some of the TV and some of the things that were available to you. So he was all of that. So I would say Kareem, would be my 5th.
I think a lot of people, I don't want to say discredit or forget about those before because they were trailblazers. And so I guess, like, you always hear, like, what's the new thing? Done with the 90s. And there was nobody they were playing against back then. But somebody had to start it. Somebody had to do it. And Kareem did it at such a high level. So I feel like he has to be in the top 5.
Yeah, no, Kareem. Yeah. And then he held this record for 40 years, I believe it is.
Right.
Like, how we just keep stepping over Kareem to get to whoever it is that, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of guys that could be on that list, but those are my guys. To me, Magic is the best point guard that's ever played, regardless of, Steph changing the game in a way. But, like, think about where the game was at when Magic came into the game, right?
Yeah.
Say thank you. Yeah. Say thank you to Magic and Larry Bird, everyone. So I don't think Steph or anyone else has caught and surpassed Magic. And remember, his career was cut short because he got the virus that could cause AIDS, HIV. So, Magic to me is the best. So, in my opinion, how could you go wrong with those 5? LeBron can play anywhere, right? So if you go on position basketball, you can put those guys in position as well.
For sure.
Okay. All right. Now, listing your top 5 and then building a 7-man roster is a little different in some cases. So I like your 5, but if you had to build a 7-man roster, including one coach, to play 82-game season and win a title, who's on your team?
My coach is Chuck Daly. I'm a Piston, so I'm going with Chuck.
Say Chuck Daly.
I'm going with Chuck. I know everybody want to go with Phil. I hear you on Phil, but I'm going Chuck, right? Because he took the Isaiah Thomas Detroit Pistons, won 2 back-to-back championships, almost got 3. If Bird don't steal the ball, the play that's always in the garden, might have been 3 in a row. So I'm going Chuck. And that Pistons team was like a bunch of dysfunctional personalities that came together. Yeah. Rodman, Sally, Rick Mahorn. They're all misfits, if you will. Joe Dumars coming out of McNeese State. Boom, they win a title, right?
Yeah.
2 of them. So I'm going Chuck Daly. Out of my 5, I'm keeping 4. I'm keeping Magic. I'm keeping MJ, Jordan. I'm keeping Kobe.
Okay.
I'm keeping LeBron.
Okay. I knew he was going to come off that list. I knew it.
Yeah, I'm coming off that list for the 7th. So that's 4. Ooh. So now 5, I'm sliding in Bill Russell.
Oh, what? Okay.
So listen, because look how good this team is, right? 7-man roster. Everybody ain't going to be able to shoot.
Yeah. True.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Russell showed that he could play with Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And he could win. Yeah. So you got to have someone that's a leader someone that has the personality to be able to manage these egos. Bill Russell did it as a player and as a player coach, right? He's the only one that really did the player coach thing, right? Which was mentioned. Somebody threw that out. Let LeBron be the player coach of the Lakers at one point, right? So Bill Russell, that's 5. Then I'm going Steph Curry because the game is different now, so you need somebody to stretch the floor.
Yeah.
And then my 7th is going to be a little bit of an unorthodox pick, and I would go between 2 guys. But I think you need a dog. Like, hey man, bring the I don't want to curse, but bring the effing house down, right?
Yeah.
Kevin Garnett.
I knew it.
I'm going KG, bro. Yep. So my 7, right? You got, let everybody debate who's the best. Whether it's Michael Jordan, is it LeBron, is it Kobe? Cool, y'all argue that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going with the best point guard to, come on now. Magic Johnson, right? The fast break, right? He got eyes everywhere, right? And he's a Michigan State alumni. Yeah. I'm going with the champ, Bill Russell, right? The greatest, right? The most winningest athlete for basketball. I'm going with Steph, who's stretching the floor, and I'm going with that mother effer. I'm going with KG, that pit bull that's coming in there. Yeah. So that one, I think that 7. I think we can line up with anybody.
You ain't throwing Shaq in there ever?
Now look, Shaq was the one guy that would have been that. Is it Shaq or KG? Okay? Now look, hey, don't be mad at me, Shaq, because you know what I mean. I'm 90, I think you're 89. Shaq, I love you, baby. You my man, $100,000. But I just would Shaq make the team a better, more dominant? Yes. Yeah. But you got to have some personalities. The 7 dudes, and I think Shaq and Kobe, right?
Yeah, true.
Maybe depending on what time frame this team was put together, where they're at, egos. I think KG would maybe fit a little bit better with this team because he would take more of a defensive role. I mean, you could have put Tim Duncan. There's other guys, right? I mean, I love Tim Duncan and others. But for me, I'm going with the pit bull and KG, Steph to stretch the floor. I'm adding Bill Russell so that, we make sure we win. And then I'm going with the 4 guys that I think are the best.
No, I like that. Your team literally from top to bottom has everything on it. And I was second guessing that Bill Russell decision until you brought up the leadership aspect, someone to rein in that team. And that right there goes unnoticed more than anything else on a championship team. So I like
absolutely, that. Man. They always talk about all-star teams win games and teams win championships. So it's you gotta have somebody to kind of keep the team a team, keep the main thing a main thing.
Yeah. And then even so, not having Shaq coming in, I like that you put at least a power forward in there, because then if you take Kobe or Mike out of that equation and just have a 2, you move LeBron up to a 3, then you got a power forward coming in to complement the 3, 4, and then Bill. I like it. I love it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Hey, it ain't, it ain't everybody's team, but it's my team.
But it's your team.
My team.
The other day we had an interesting take when it came to the Ball brothers. I personally like both of their games. And then so I was saying, if healthy, in the perfect world, because the point guard position is so heavy right now, I think it's very plausible that they could be top 5 in the next season if both healthy. How do you feel about that?
Now listen, a lot of people said this man over here was crazy. They said, no, they can never be. Even if they were healthy, you still got Brunson, Dane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Even Halliburton now is thrown in there. So I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because ours is a little, I guess, different.
Man, this is always difficult. The health thing is always tough, right? Because it's always that unpredictable situation. So I see LaMelo not as a point guard. I see Melo kind of more as a untraditional, point forward type of a player, right? So Lonzo has speed, quickness. He's strong. He's a good athlete, and Lonzo has that vision.
Yeah.
Now think about this. Now Lonzo, he took a UCLA team that they weren't that good, and they had great success. Mm-hmm. He made everyone better. I remember years ago, man, it was an issue about discussing kids, and one of my players, Jason Richardson. I'll just tell you, it was Jason Richardson. He was talking about back then the college kids would play. They would have a scrimmage against the USA basketball team.
Right.
Okay. And Jay Rich talked about at the time I think it was Jason Williams, was the point guard of that team. And he's like, man, he's holding on to the ball a little long. He's getting the assist, but by the time he get it to me, like I got to make a difficult play. But if he would just trust me and get it ahead early, then I could make a play, you know what I mean, and have better results on my end, especially in transition.
Yeah.
He wouldn't necessarily get the assist because I might have to put it on the deck.
Right.
So you have a lot of traditional point guards now, not to name names because so much has changed. They hold on to the ball and like, all right, shoot it now, right? Right? Like, all right, shoot, your turn, right?
Right.
To me, that's not your traditional point guard. I think like, you know, how Isaiah Thomas did, Magic Johnson, they passed it ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Lonzo Ball gave the ball up.
Yes.
And so being a point guard that moves it, like you can't run faster than the ball moves.
Yeah.
So, you know, why was Golden State so good? Because the ball doesn't stick, right? It's always moving.
Yeah.
You can't outrun a pass.
Yeah.
So taking that, I believe Lonzo Ball could be an excellent point guard, and then ranking him top 5 would not be out the question. Now, speaking in LaMelo, I think he's different. I think that's another subject. He would go to more of your scoring lead type guards where you essentially giving the ball to your best player and say, hey man, we're going to play off you.
Yeah.
But Lonzo is your old school, great team leading point guard, and if he could come back and he could be healthy, I think he would climb the charts very fast.
I mean, LaMelo, what did he do? 20 and 8. It looks like my biggest thing is that he looks like he's having so much fun out there more than actually like these are grown men that you're playing against, and he did not have a traditional way of getting to the league, and he just looks like it's so much fun out there, and he's putting up these numbers. So as soon as he starts to reel it in and really just like focus on basketball, I feel like he's going to be a problem if he's healthy.
Now, LaMelo's incredible, right? Now, let's do this. Let's shout out their dad because the dad has got criticized a lot. And, man, to have 2 players go top 5 in the draft, bro, that's incredible. I don't care what you call it, what you want to label. Brilliant is what I call it. That's brilliant, right? So shout out to him, for working their ass off, instilling the talent in them, holding them accountable. You can question the business decisions and all of that, but shout out to Dad for that. That's a mark that maybe might not be repeated anytime soon. But that being said, I love LaMelo. I'm just saying that it's different. It's, kind of goes with the Halliburton. Yeah. I think there's room for guys to, kind of jump in and take off.
Yeah.
I think LaMelo is definitely as talented as Halliburton and several others. Right? He has so much in his package. He gives you those untraditional passes, right? He's going to give you that flash and razzle dazzle with his game.
Yeah.
And he will pass ahead. LaMelo will as well. But I think also there's a burden on LaMelo to score that could potentially, maybe take away from his attributes as a point guard, because I think they need him to do that. And obviously he can do that as well.
All right. So what do you, like with JJ Redick becoming a Lakers head coach, there's been a lot of questionable decisions because they think there's other people out there that have better accolades or better resume than he does. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you feel about that?
First of all, Sam Cassell is a great coach. I mean, he's won as a player. What you're talking about, he's won as a player. He's won as a coach. He's paid his dues. He's been in different organizations. He's always been a leader. He's always been someone that has overcome obstacles, whether it's career-wise, so on and so forth. So Sam Cassell deserves an opportunity. Now, the Lakers is different. It's LA. It's the Lakers. It's a different storied program. There's a look. There's a level of pressure and all of those things that come with it. So, just being thrown in, anybody as a first-time coach is going to be difficult. So, JJ Redick. JJ Redick has been through the fire from the standpoint as he does media.
Yeah.
There's pressure with that, right? You guys, entirely media, right? You guys have your own podcast. You know what I mean? Like there's pressure being able to answer questions and be able to think on the fly. So that, I think JJ has experience of that. JJ has, he's played at Duke, Coach K. He's had a number of coaches in the league. So I would imagine that he has a philosophy and different strategies that he would be able to deliver. Nothing beats experience, right? He doesn't have experience. He's never coached in the NBA. So anybody to say he's going to be great or he's going to be terrible or whatever, we're all just taking a wild guess. You know what I mean? I think we're all taking a guess.
Yeah.
But I worked with Rob Pelinka, and I like Rob. And Rob is different, and people don't always get him or understand him. But Rob Pelinka is different. He thinks, thinks different. He has his own process of evaluating. And so I would believe in Rob's decision, right? We go back. So I would think that he did his due diligence in making that decision. It's not just coaching, it's culture, right? It's culture. It's, the Lakers are always under the microscope. So there's, people are talking about the look, right?
Yeah.
He has the look. Can he deal with the pressure? Can he carry himself a particular way? And I don't think that it is the pressure of necessarily judging him specifically on winning today. I believe that they're preparing for just life after LeBron, like him learning with LeBron. You know what? Give him an opportunity to coach with LeBron so he can pick up some things and then be prepared, to move the Lakers into the future thereafter LeBron. So I think they're kind of, in my opinion, giving him the opportunity to coach with a guy at LeBron's level. So then when we have the next one, you had some experience with a megastar or a superstar.
That's an excellent viewpoint. Again, Lakers, whole different animal when you talk about teams and bringing a coach in, right? And so I think I agree with you there, having him in that position where you're looking at these next few years as a learning experience rather than we must win now should change the perspective on how, I guess, in 4 years when his contract negotiations happen, might be looking at that a little differently, or at least they might be looking at that a little differently than how the world will.
I definitely wish nothing but the best for anybody in their ventures. Like that's not what I'm saying when it comes to like JJ. I just feel like what you said, you kind of hit on the head, the nail on the head earlier. Like you can't coach experience. Like I feel like Sam Cassell, just specifically that one. That's when I saw the most recent. But like Sam Cassell, his resume is so crazy, and on the teams he played, his basketball career plus his coaching career for like the past 10 years, most recently Celtics. So it's just like, and he was the Clippers assistant coach. So he's had those big environments and everything, especially even being in LA. I just feel like, maybe it is the look. Everything's about money. Everything's about money. Everything's about marketing. So I do feel like SJJ is more marketable than Sam Cassell. But I was just like, sheesh. When he put it side by side, I'm like, dang.
Yeah, side by side is not going to compare, right? If you're just traditional thinking. I am a little bit surprised that they went with a player again, though, because having Darvin Ham was a player.
Yeah.
I was a little bit surprised that they went with a player again and not a heavily experienced coach, but they thought outside the box. So I think they're thinking different. I think, in my opinion, they may have felt Cassell is could be similar to Darvin Ham. Darvin Ham has been an assistant for a long time, won a championship with the Bucks. Always been that, right-hand guy, and boom, we gave him a chance.
Yeah.
That would probably be similar with Cassell. So you know what? We're gonna change this and mix it up a little bit. We're gonna go outside the box. We're giving a guy a first chance, but a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I think they just kind of switched gears a little bit and went a little bit more unique in their decision process.
I'm saying he's definitely credible.
All right. So then, taking our last question back home for you, when you look at the Detroit Pistons. What is one piece of advice that you would give them to make their next season a better one?
Wow. Ooh, put me on the spot here. I got a lot of relationships with the Pistons now. I work for Aaron Teller, who's the chairman. Tracy and Langdon, they just hired. I love that hire. I think that's fantastic. Tracy's going to be great. Yeah. But if I was to give advice, right, it would be locking into the city. What do you mean? Now, marketing and NIL, and they've done a lot of good things. And I'm sure they'll continue to do. But matching that blue collar mind. Think about when the Pistons were good. Chauncey Billups, Rasheed Wallace, right? Blue collar type dudes, right? Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Sally. It's always been with like a gritty, hardworking, match the energy of the city type of a roster.
Right.
A Hollywood roster, it just won't mix in Detroit, right? It just won't be well received by the community, won't be well received by the media, won't be received by the fans. So I think that they need to continue. I think they're on the right path. I think they're going to do a great job. I would just say that, from a coaching standpoint, the culture, and as they continue to add, to the roster, to continue to add guys that match that blue collar, energy, that hard working mentality. Guys that are not prima donnas. Guys that also healthy. Guys that can give you, maybe they can't give you 82 games, but guys that have the desire to play 82 games, right? Especially when you're looking at free agency. Like instead of getting a guy that may be a name, whatever, who's a guy that's durable? Who's a guy that is, that's going to be with us every night?
Yeah.
I think, obviously it's a mix in the match, but I think that would be an area that if I was giving any advice, and I'm not, even though there was an article that came out that suggested, me being in the front office over there, I'm not, but I got great relationships over there. I love those guys. Aaron Tellum has been a mentor and a friend a long time. So that would be my advice.
So just keep the bad boy Pistons vibe when it comes to Detroit.
Yes, okay. I think you have to.
Who probably might have done well over there if he wasn't so tied into Golden State would have been Draymond.
Absolutely.
Yes.
He went to Michigan. So
and he's in Michigan. Yeah, went to Michigan. Yeah.
Yes, Draymond would be great as a Piston, and that may even happen. That may not. That might still be something that potentially maybe happen. You never know. Free agency and the trade deadline, things happen. But he would definitely fit.
Yeah.
Kevon Looney would fit.
That's a good one too.
Looney's gritty.
Guy that plays 82 games, right?
Yeah.
That he would fit.
I like that. I like that a lot. Especially because the talent there. I mean, it's not, when you look at the Pistons, it's not a talent deficiency that they have. They have the talent, I think, at least. It's just like you were saying, like you need that mentality, and obviously a coach that supports that mentality that you were talking about. So,
yeah, I mean, it just was a whole. They had to make changes, and the changes that they made, I think, hopefully moving forward, different vision, different leadership. I think, different coaching. I think things will get better here moving forward.
I think they got a great piece in Cade. So
man,
because he's tough. Like he's tough.
Yes.
And then they got those surrounding pieces. So, but yes, I kind of switch it up real quick. If you could go back in time to like your 18-year-old self, what would be some advice now looking back that you would give yourself?
One piece
of advice.
It would just be one sentence. It would just be like, it's going to be all right. And I think when you're younger, right? So I'm a believer, right? And so being a believer, as you go through trials and tribulations and things change and different dynamics, your emotions often may get you into trouble with your decisions because often we make emotional decisions. So I would just, try to give myself a level of calmness and I would say to myself, stay the course, is going to be all right. And that would, obviously I would, change some things, but I think decisions that I made that I might want to adjust would be because of emotions. And so simply just, everything's going to be all right. Stay the course, be calm, think things through.
Staying on the course of life, I think that during the duration that we spend here on Earth, you can always look at certain people that kind of shaped your life, made you pivot, put you on the right path, whatever it may be. I want to talk about 3 people that in your current life up until today have been the most influential for you, and how did they actually impact you?
3 people. I can't name 10, right? 3. All right, 3. So the first one would be my pastor, Edward Lucas. New Faith Tabernacle Church of God in Christ out of Detroit, Michigan, right? He is the first one that, helped me along with, I had another uncle as well, Bishop Bogan. Both of them passed, but Elder Edward Lucas was the first one to, instill that love for Christ, that love for having a relationship with the Lord, you know, and enjoying having a relationship with the Lord and trying to have him be involved in as many things as possible, everything, but come on now, we're all sinners and we all make mistakes. So I'm not gonna make it seem like you know, like I'm a bad boy, right? I've done a lot of bad things, right?
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, he instilled in me, you know, to repent, ask for forgiveness. Yeah. And so that has been kind of at the center of my life, right? All the mistakes that I've made in life, I'm always repent. So he'd be number one. Number two, I would say, would be Sonny Vaccaro. Sonny Vaccaro has guided all of this, man. This guy has navigated for young athletes forever, right? It's not just ABCD camp, the Round Ball Classic, our relationship with all of the shoe companies, the big time. But it's also, he's the one that nudged me into the agent space. He's the one that introduced me to Arn Tullen. That's how I went to SFX. He's the one that is why I had a relationship with Mark Warkentien. He's the one who I established my first, you know, relationship with Coach Tim Gergerich, who, you know, doesn't get a lot of credit. You know, those old timers, they know him in the Gergerich camp. That's like the first, like, working camp where all of these guys, Paul Pierce and Baron Davis, all these guys over the years honed their skills. Started with Eric Snow when Coach Gerg was in Seattle. So without Sonny, I mean, man, I mean, anytime I've been in any type of situation, first person I call is Sonny, right? Sonny, what do you think? You know, Sonny, what is your thoughts? So Sonny has shaped pretty much everything for me from a basketball standpoint and a career standpoint. And then this one it's easy to say, but it's not. Tom Izzo. Now, Tom has known me since I was an 18-year-old kid coming to Michigan State University looking to play basketball, okay? And he was assistant coach to Judd at that time, and obviously became the head coach and is, you know, still getting it done. But Tom and I have had like this roller coaster relationship because I dominated AAU. And at one point, I'm going to be honest, I pushed and almost suggested everybody go to Michigan State. And then there was a period where it was like, wait a second, everybody can't go to Michigan State. Like, they got to go to other schools, which wasn't good business for Tom because in his mind, I want them all, right? Yeah. And so me like, well, hold on, they got to look at other spots. There was a little bit of a conflict, and so things got a little rocky for some time. But over the years, I mean, he's the one that I went to when Matt Ishbia wanted to play basketball in college and is like, hey, coach, I want to play. Tom, I want you to take this 5'9" kid and let him walk on your basketball team, right? And so that whole dynamic opened up. So Iz has kind of been that one that holds me accountable. Like, he'll curse me out, right? Because he's known me since I'm 18. I'm 52. Iz, to this day, would be, you know, my nickname is Cruz. Cruz, that's bullshit, excuse my language. And he'll call me out on things. And so those probably have all impacted me, I would say, the most throughout my life.
Sir.
Well said.
And kind of just to wrap it all up, we've asked you a lot of questions today, but
2 hours.
What was one question that you wish we'd asked, and how would you have answered it?
I wish you guys would have asked about NIL, because I use this hashtag of father of NIL, right? And so everybody loves name, image, and likeness. But a lot of people don't know the history of it, right? And so it started because everybody was saying players should get paid. Chris Webber was, when he talked about why he went pro, he's like, man, I see my jersey, you know, in the student bookstore and it's selling for $100 and I can't even buy it. I'm going pro. And you've had stories for years about that. Well, myself, Gary Charles, we would discuss it at ABCD camp every year. And we try to do some things to help. And so we initially started with filing these lawsuits that nobody knows about. We would file these, we try to create these class action lawsuits, right? Small ones, different states, boom, boom, boom. And with our guys, it would be whoever I had, Eric Devendorf, Anthony Roberson, whoever Gary had, you know, Lamar Odom, whoever. And we'd be filing and it wouldn't get all this traction. And so we even helped football quarterback at Northwestern, Ramugi and those guys. They were trying to become unionized. So we introduced them to the Steelworkers Union to try to file for union. And so we had all this stuff going on. And finally, that magic bullet came. There was always, well, this guy is fouling because he didn't have an NBA career. He needs money, so he's fouling. Well, this guy, like, nobody ever checked the boxes until, Sonny on his own, him and Pam, decided to travel to all of these universities and just talk about the differences with college athletes not getting paid. For instance, Sonny would say he's at South Carolina University. He'd say, hey, it'd be regular students, student union. Anybody here play the piano or an artist? Yeah, I play. Awesome. Are you on scholarship? Yes, I'm on scholarship. Okay. Do you get paid to play anywhere else? Yes, I play for my church. Oh, that's awesome. You play for your church, you get paid. Yes. I'm also with an outside group and we play and I get paid. Okay. Football players and basketball players can't do the same thing that you're doing for your church. They can't go to the church and get paid. Why is that? And so it started opening up this awareness of like, well, why are you treating these guys different? What's different from them than me, an artist, me, a whatever that you do that you're on scholarship? And it got to one guy, Ed O'Bannon. Ed O'Bannon hears Sonny on the radio and he calls. And he was the magic bullet. Why? Because Ed, the NCAA always had an argument, but Ed checked all the boxes. What are the boxes? You had to play in the NCAA tournament, okay? Ed played in the NCAA tournament. The biggest part of the NCAA tournament is the Final Four. UCLA made it to the Final Four. I think that was 92. Not only did they make it to the Final Four, they won the championship. Boom. So that's the biggest darling of the NCAA is the NCAA tournament. Okay, what else? Are you suing because you ain't got no money? Well, O'Bannon played 6 to 8 years in the NBA. So he had a credible NBA career. So you can't go there. And then what was the last thing? Outside of the fact that he was also the MVP. Ed went to an NCAA darling school, a blue blood, right? UCLA, Kansas, Kentucky. He went to a blue Michigan. He went to UCLA. So he checked all of the boxes. And so ultimately, that's how we pushed through. And who led that charge was Sonny Vaccaro, myself in the background, Gary Charles in the background, others, so on and so forth. And so where we're at today, you have name, image, and likeness because of that charge, which was a 15-year fight, that opened up and established NIL today.
So then it brings me to another question. Out of everything that you've done in your career, right? Everything you've had your hand on, every decision that you've made, and every impact that you've had, out of everything that you summed up today, what do you think your greatest impact was?
I can't pick one of those things and say this was the best.
Okay. Right.
I have to say it like this. I have spent the last 30 years of my life helping kids. Mm-hmm. And that I'm incredibly proud of. Like if I don't do anything else in life, I love my children, my family, and things of that nature, but I've spent 30 years helping kids at some level. And so trying to put them in order of which was more important. Was it the camp? Was it NIL? I think NIL has had probably the greatest effect as of late, but it's not like, like my name doesn't hang over. Chris Luchey was the one. It wasn't me. It's been years of multiple individuals. But helping kids for the last 30 years of my life, that I'm proud of.
Bravo, my man. I'll let you go right after this. What's in the future for you?
People look at my career and they're like, what's going on? So I had a pause. Obviously, we didn't dive into it a lot. I lost my wife at the time, Alicia Jones, when I'm in the early going. So kind of started all over. Got married, my wife today. I have 3 kids. I have a 19-year-old. I have a 7-year-old, and I have a 4-year-old daughter. My 4-year-old daughter is like changing my whole way of looking at everything in life.
Yeah.
So I love my kids. So that is like number one. My family, I would say. I'm not taking a step back on my wife, right? My wife is the queen. So family is one. I like what I'm doing at CGL right now. I believe at some point there would be, a level of working with an NBA team again, at a different level, more of maybe an executive level or consulting level. Probably would be future. But right now, I'm focused on what I'm doing right now, and that's helping young agents, helping players, helping athletes, helping kids, helping people, but most importantly, diving to my own kids.
I love it. Well, man, that is a wrap from us. So for everybody that's tuned into this, where can they contact you? How can they find you? What's the best route to reach you, Chris?
You can reach me at Chris.Luchey, Luchey, at cglsports.co, not com.co.
Just going back to what we were talking about earlier, when it comes to character, like that's something that I really admired from like getting to know you a little bit more. The whole time, like you've been talking about, like you never talked about a dollar bill, you never talked about you never talked about that type of stuff. So I really I think that's very admirable when it comes to just staying in China for 6 months. When you could have just stayed there for the time that you needed, like all that stuff. Like I think that's something that's like kind of a lost trait in a lot of people. Just looking at people for just the opportunity that they have and a human element, and just making sure that it's just I'm doing what's best for you, us, and not the money will come. Money will come regardless. Right. I just wanted to say I really appreciate you for all that, and just listening to your story. It's definitely something very admirable.
Man, I appreciate that. I probably didn't even mention that. I'm running for state office. I am running for the House of Representatives here in the state of Georgia, District 103. Chris for Georgia, Chris4, F-O-R, Georgia.org. And it's really because, not that I'm really a political individual, but I just want to help change for the community, especially for our kids. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of my mantra, if you will, in everything, right? I just want to, try to make things a little bit better than when I found them.